Hi folks, welcome back to the Cannabis Corner. I'm your host, Kerry Burns. I want to start out the program with offering a huge congratulations and happy anniversary to High Times magazine. They've celebrated their 40th anniversary, and I think that this magazine has been one of the key players in the cannabis movement throughout the last 4 decades. They've always had the greatest articles, the best photos, and certainly the hottest chicks in their magazine. And I want to congratulate them and wish them continued success. And I hope that all of you out there, if you're not a subscriber to High Times, or if you don't currently buy their issues, that you should do that, because they really have done a wonderful job over the last 4 decades. And my hat's off. I salute them wholeheartedly. This month also brings about the 40th anniversary of when that pile of crap Nixon left office, resigned the presidency because of the Watergate issue. And it's too bad that with all the scandal that he was involved in and all, that the American people didn't open their eyes and abolish the Controlled Substance Act and the Drug Enforcement Agency, which were brought about because of Nixon. And my personal feeling is that Harry Anslinger, who was the first drug czar that made the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act and later the Singles Narcotics Treaty, I believe that him and Nixon should have been hung from the same rope and dangled from the highest point in Washington, D.C. If you look at what these two pieces of legislation and of course the formation of the Drug Enforcement Agency, if you look at what all of the hatred and all the violence and all the murder and all the people's lives have been ruined because of these two pieces of legislation and these two pieces of you-know-what people, then certainly you probably would feel the same way as I do. You know, we didn't learn anything from Prohibition in this country when the Al Capone gangs were running rampant and people were, there were gangs formed for control of the alcohol business and all that. And here we are, we have in Nixon's time, he forms the Drug Enforcement Agency and passes the Controlled Substance Act. And of course it led to the rise of the Mexican cartels in Mexico and then subsequent, all the ruthlessness and murders and innocent people that have died at their hands. And then you look at all the people in this country that have been arrested for cannabis and had their lives completely turned upside down, they're completely ruined. People that had lots of potential, could have, there's no telling what they could have done had they been given the opportunity. Instead, they, rotted away in a prison cell because they were busted for cannabis. And one thing I don't understand about believe me, I applaud the fact that we have states out on the west part of the country that are making cannabis legal and all. But what I don't understand is why legislation wasn't written into these new laws that brought about the legalization that immediately freed the people that are in jail for cannabis crimes. And how many parents out there lost custody of their children through the years, because they were labeled drug offenders when really they were just pot smokers. I mean, how come the day that the cannabis went legal in Colorado and Washington and all, everybody that was in jail for pot crimes should have been released, and also their record should have been exonerated and completely wiped clean. How come the legislation wasn't written up for that? I think that's one of the biggest flaws in the legislation that came about that made these legal in these states is missing. These people that been sitting in jail and they're there for pot crimes, and it's just absurd. The fact that we could now finally have it where it's legal, yet we still have people that are sitting in jail and paying for basically a crime that really wasn't a crime. And I hope that all the powers that be, and the New York Times just this past few weeks, they released a really nice front page article on how the federal government needs to drop their ban on cannabis and the Controlled Substance Act. And I salute them for that. That was quite a shocker to see that in the New York Times, and it just goes to show you that the tide is starting to turn finally here in this country. And But there's so much yet to be done, and when you hear these different groups on television talking about, oh well, it's time to open up the discussion for cannabis legalization and all that, that's a bunch of bull. We've just like High Times for the last 40 years, people like myself for 40 years have been fighting this battle, and the discussion's been open for a long time. We've just had this hardcore government in place and these ruthless, heartless people in control that obviously were either short-sighted in their brain and couldn't see really what was going on, or they were just crooked, and I pretty much go for the latter part of that. But cannabis, has shown. I mean, you look at just look at the times in so far, and we've known this for 40 years. This didn't take legalization in Colorado or Washington or any of the other states for people to find this out. But we knew that cannabis was harmless. We knew that it had never killed anyone. We knew that it had never sent anybody to the hospital. We knew that it had great benefits not only as a medicinal product but as an industrial product. We've known all this. There's nothing new that's being told today about cannabis that we didn't already know back then. And I'm sick and tired of the lies of the powers that be saying that, oh well, the cannabis today is stronger than back then and all that. And there is no bigger lie than that. That is just absolutely not true. In my early college days, several years before the DEA was formed and the Drug Enforcement Agency and all, we were smoking those primo varieties that were just as strong as the ones that you're seeing today. Fortunately though, today we do have a lot of really smart growers and a lot of really good growers out there, and they are doing a lot of crossings, and we are able to see a lot of different varieties out there, and I think this is wonderful. I believe this has been one of the main reasons that legalization has come about finally in a few of the states so far. And what are we waiting on the rest of the states to to be able to join them? We're all Americans here. It seems a bit unfair that you have two states where people can freely express their use of cannabis, and they should by their constitutional freedoms, and yet we have 48 other states in this country. Hopefully that'll be even less here soon, but that are Americans that use cannabis, yet we can still be arrested and put in jail for this herb, and this is wrong. And I believe that all the future legislations that come about it, that bring about legalization in the other states that haven't adopted this so far, that it needs to be written in there that the people that are sitting in jail right now for pot crimes they need to be released the day that it becomes legal, or even before that. If the legislation is going to pass and it's going to go through, and we have a time frame and a date set on it, go ahead and let these people out. Let them start enjoying the freedoms that they deserve and that their Constitution grants them, and exonerate their records and anything in the past that that has scarred them, because it's ruined a lot of lives. Not only the amount of people that have died, unfortunately, but just the people whose lives that have been ruined just for the fact that they've been arrested. And hopefully hopefully the people out there are waking up. Hopefully they're seeing the fact that cannabis use being legal now in Colorado for almost a year, and in Washington now for several months, and then we have several other states fixing to take the same move, and that we haven't had any crime. We haven't had any crime being caused by that. We haven't had anybody dying from it. We haven't had anybody being sent to the hospital, other than these children that that are getting sick from eating the edibles. I mean, come on. They want to make such a big deal out of that because they just are trying to find one last little thread to hang on to that they can, say about cannabis and make sure that the people still have this BS running through their head about it and all. And I just think that that's wrong. And you people in, like in Louisiana, their legislatures were just saying that, the cannabis is destroying the brains of their youth and all that. I mean, this is so retarded, and this is the same type of stuff that they were saying back then when I was in high school in the early days of college, when everybody back then was smoking. They were saying that it was going to destroy the youth and none of us would be able to graduate from college or anything like that. And of course, we proved that over and over that they were wrong, and it's been being proved, for decades, year after year. People very productive citizens have smoked cannabis. They've had productive lives. They've had children. They've raised children properly. They've generated good families. They've done good things for other people. So, you know, all of these lies in the past that the government and the powers that be and law enforcement all used as tools to, you know, to express to the public that, you know, we need to have these laws against these cannabis criminals. You know, finally all of that, I believe, is finally starting to wake people up. And the public opinion today too, when the American citizens are polled, you know, over 65% favor legalization, and they don't believe that people should be arrested for cannabis, particularly in light of the fact that you have alcohol, cigarettes, and prescription drugs out there killing over 500,000 people a year, and these substances are legal. I do believe that if you're going to have the cannabis shops, you need to have an age limit. What that age limit is, I'm not sure. 18, 21. I don't think that that's real critical. I do believe there probably ought to be an age limit, just like you have with alcohol. Even though we don't have the severity of the, you know, problems that alcohol causes, and cigarettes too, among the youth and all, but I guess there has to be a starting point. You have to have some type of age limit out there, and certainly shouldn't be sold to children or even, you know, pushed on to children, which I don't like that word, but we just are a smarter society than what we've shown to be in the last 4 decades. And thank God the people in Colorado and Washington and hopefully here in Oregon and I look for California and probably a few of the states on the East Coast here to pass legislation in their states that does allow people to finally express the freedoms of being able to use cannabis without the threat of going to jail or the threat of having their lives turned upside down by law enforcement and the judicial system. This movement, you know, making things legal and by freeing all of these prisoners from, you know, from the jail system and all, is not only going to save billions and billions of dollars that we spend every year housing people that are in there for pot crimes, but also it'll give these people an opportunity to actually turn their lives around, to actually enjoy freedoms for a change and rebuild the lives that have been fragmented by these pieces of legislation. I mean, Harry Anslinger, you know, he was the nephew of Andrew Mellon, which at the time was the Secretary of the Treasury, and you know, he was the first drug czar, and he was one of these types that, you know, he couldn't get a job. He was, you know, he only got this job, you know, through, you know, the fact that his uncle was a powerful figure there in Washington D.C. and we had all of these federal law enforcement people that, you know, after Prohibition ended, you know, none of them had a job, and this was a way of putting all these people back to work. And instead of them chasing alcohol, now they were chasing cannabis, and it's wrong. And the original legislation, the Marijuana Tax Act, it was an entrapment issue. It unfairly punished people who had been growing hemp legally in this country, and then all of a sudden they're entrapped and arrested because they don't have a proper stamp for their hemp production. And of course, it was the same thing they did with the machine guns from the Roaring 20s when the Treasury Department took over those. They, you know, told people come in, you had to get a special stamp to possess that, and then when they came in, they confiscated the weapon and arrested the people who had them because they were in possession in violation of the law, not having a proper permit for their machine gun. The Marijuana Tax Act was the same thing. The farmers had to bring in the samples of their hemp they were growing so they could get their permits to grow it, and as soon as they brought it in and all, they were arrested because they were in violation of growing hemp without a proper permit. And of course later the Singles Narcotics Treaty, and then, you know, not even a decade later when Nixon formed his Controlled Substance Act and the Drug Enforcement Agency, then the shit just hit the fan. And it's just terrible that it took 4 decades for this to come about, for the legalization in Colorado and now Washington, and hopefully the other 48 states, which seem to be dragging their behinds in these issues. And that's why I salute magazines like High Times, because they were there at the forefront. They understood that from the beginning that Nixon was wrong. They understood that the Drug Enforcement Agency is wrong, that nobody has a right to form a band of criminals like the Drug Enforcement Agency and chase after people for cannabis. I mean, this This is wrong, and if anything, those people should be locked up and put in jail for the rest of their life. Not the cannabis people, but unfortunately, that's not the way it happened. And I just do believe there's a bright light at the end of the tunnel now, and we finally are seeing some progress in the cannabis movement. But certainly, a lot more has to happen. And I hope that these states that are bringing about future legislation that will bring about legal cannabis in their states and all, I do hope that they'll incorporate in this legislation the fact that all of the people that are in jail right now for the cannabis crimes in those states be released immediately. Let them out. Let them start enjoying the freedoms that they so deserve. And I know that probably one of the biggest fears of law enforcement and the judicial system, like you do when when they release criminals that have been wrongly, put in jail for long periods of time and all, the judicial system has to pay them restitution. And I'm sure that there's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion among the powers that be that feeling like that restitution is going to have to be paid to all these people that have been wrongly accused for cannabis and certainly placed in jail for it. And all of that should happen. I know that won't happen. And I'm sure that most of the people out there that are sitting in a jail cell right now for cannabis crimes, they would gladly let the restitution part, just be forgiven and not happen as long as they could be released and start enjoying the freedoms that their Constitution of the United States allows them. And I think that that's one of the things that's missing in these legislations that are being passed in these states where it is becoming legal, is that there is no, there's no section there that says, hey, we were wrong. The government was wrong about this. Law enforcement has been wrong about this. Let's not keep continuing to make wrongs. Let's let these people out of jail and let them start enjoying the freedoms that every other American out there enjoys. I mean, people who like to drink and buy alcohol and all that, they go to the liquor store and they buy their liquor, they go home and they drink, they get drunk. Hopefully they're not out driving a car after that, but they're not tackled when they leave the liquor store and arrested for possession of a six-pack in their possession when they're heading home and all that, because we have alcohol legal. And certainly the people who use cannabis, who want to enjoy the cannabis or smoke it or possess it or grow it, they shouldn't be bothered either. And it's just, I'm not real sure where people like Anslinger and Nixon ever, they obviously were very shallow individuals. They obviously were very insecure, and also too, I really don't think that many of them realized that what they were doing was going to bring about the atrocities that it did. I mean, you look down in Mexico at the cartels, and most of their operations down there, the turf battles and whatnot, it is to supply the cannabis to the United States. And they're ruthless. I mean, they murder people, behead them, hang them in public places for the public to see, pretty much as as a warning to the law enforcement and the military and the cops down there that, hey, don't mess with us because we're not afraid to cut your head off and make a public figure out of you. This type of activity is just atrocious, and it's as bad or worse than any atrocity that's going on around any of these countries in the world that we currently are trying to get involved in and fight in again, such as Iraq. And I hope the American people really, when you look at just the short term that it's been legal in Colorado and Washington, and the fact that that the cannabis smokers were right. It didn't bring about increased crime. In fact, the crime rate has gone down. It didn't bring about increased burglaries or anything like that. The crime rates have gone down, and we've proven every level, every step of the way that they were wrong. That they were wrong about what cannabis did. That they were wrong about the legislation and the laws that were in place to arrest people and place them in jail for cannabis. They were wrong, and all the cannabis smokers want in this country is the freedoms to be able to grow, possess, use without any type of law enforcement, coming in and telling them what to do, telling them how many plants they need to grow or what types they can grow or who can grow this or who can grow that. It's all such a bunch of bull. And I really think that the the love of the people in this country needs to be spread around to these shallow individuals, because that's really what they're missing. They don't quite, they just don't quite get it, and I feel sorry for them. And it's something that's so simple. And you know, this point of these groups saying, oh yeah, I think that it should be going up for discussion, all that, you know, that all should be thrown out the window. How about that we have executive order passed today that says cannabis is legal, that no longer can a law enforcement arrest anybody for cannabis, that, you know, let the states work out their different, how they want to do the different grow shops and the fees and certainly the sales tax, you know, rate in Colorado and whatnot. Yeah, it's generating a lot of money, but come on. You know, cannabis shouldn't be taxed, sales taxed any heavier than any of the other things that are sold out there on the free market. And hopefully that will happen. The price is certainly coming down. And the only thing that excessive sales tax and these prices that the grow shops are charging there in places like Colorado and Washington is that you're making the illegal market thrive, because they're out there on the streets. The cannabis prices for these same varieties is way less, and of course the people aren't having to pay the sales tax. So, you know, I had said from the beginning that once we start allowing people to grow and people to be able to possess and all, the price would come down, because, you know, the price that they're getting for the cannabis right now and have been for quite some time has been based on an illegal market and an illegal cartel. And now we've just switched to another cartel that, you know, charges a 25% sales tax on top of their, you know, high rated price that they're charging for the cannabis right now. And fortunately, as time goes on and people are allowed to grow their own cannabis and all this, the price is going to fall through the floor. And that's what I predicted, you know, when I first started out doing this program, the Cannabis Corner, in 2010. I knew that once we started dropping this strong arm of the government off of the people and allow them to actually operate free, like the Constitution spelled out that they could do, I knew that it would just be a matter of time before the price started coming down. And it allows these better varieties of cannabis to be available to areas where it hadn't been in the past, and except in extreme cases. We were very lucky back in the early 70s, 1970, to get some of these Afghani varieties and all, and we were able to grow them back then, and they were certainly very potent and certainly very enjoyable. And thank God now with the you know, the work that's going on out there with all the growers, and I salute the growers out there on the West Coast. I think y'all are turning out fantastic product. I'm sorry that you're still under some scrutiny, because there is, you know, you're limited in the amount you can grow, and you're a lot of places you have to have the cameras and just constantly being watched and all, and I think this is just totally wrong. But thank God it is starting to turn around for you. But I do salute y'all. Keep up the good work. I think that y'all's efforts, the what's being produced, the strain crossings, and all of the wonderful different varieties that are being generated by the cannabis growers and the cannabis movement, I think this is just beneficial to the entire movement. And it's a shame that the American public, you know, didn't have a little bit more on the ball back in the early 70s, and certainly back in 1937 when Harry Anslinger and his bunch of cronies, you know, did what they did. But you know, the times back then, it's understandable how that piece of legislation was able to be pulled off, because the ones that were in control of everything, you know, all they did was just, you know, pay off their little senators and in closed doors had this legislation passed. Of course, God, why didn't somebody stick a knife in the back of Anslinger back then? I don't understand. And then the fact that he in 1961 was able to be at the forefront of the Singles Narcotics Treaty, which, you know, turned the cannabis movement upside down, you know, in the entire world. But fortunately, it is turning around in places like Spain, Portugal, of course Amsterdam for a long time, even though it's not legal there completely yet, but Sweden, places like that, Switzerland. We are starting to see a lot of people growing cannabis, and the laws lax a little bit for the citizens there. Certainly it needs to happen here in the United States. We really cannot stop this battle. We cannot stop the fight until all 50 states enjoy the freedoms of not free cannabis, but legal cannabis, and the ability to possess, grow, smoke, use in any form of cannabis that we want to without law enforcement looking over our shoulder or locking us up in jail. And once again, High Times, keep up the good work. Y'all are just a fantastic magazine. I know y'all been through a lot of peril in your early days, and you yourselves have been under a lot of scrutiny, and certainly some of the people that have worked for you have been, you know, unfairly prosecuted and whatnot. But I salute you, and I am very proud of the fact that I'm an American citizen. I'm proud of the fact that I'm a cannabis user, and I'm proud of the fact that I am part of this cannabis movement to try to make it legal, because this is what's right. This is as an American citizen, this is what's right. As a human being, this is what's right. And I salute y'all all wholeheartedly. Keep it up. Let's don't let up till the other 48 states have passed legislation, and let's free all of the people that are in jail right now for cannabis crimes. It's absolutely absurd that they're allowed to put these people in jail in the first place, but it's even more awful that they are, you know, forced to spend one more day behind bars just because they wanted to smoke pot. And I thank you for joining the Cannabis Corner.